Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at Dawnbreaker. So Dawnbreaker, just like every other new hero in Dota, just like I said with the Marcy guide I just made, every single new hero seems to be able to play every position 1 through 5, and Dawnbreaker is no exception. Now, we will be focusing on Dawnbreaker offlane in this guide, and that's because Dawnbreaker offlane does a little bit of everything. So if you play this hero as a carry, you're going to be going for a lot of damage like Deso, AC, and obviously a BKB. You buy BKB on this hero all the time. If you play a support Dawnbreaker, which is also very popular, it's a really good support hero, you pretty much don't buy any damage. You just focus on your innate skills or your innate utility in your skills with your stun, your slow, your mobility, and your awesome team fight ultimate. Now, the offlane version of this hero does a little bit of everything. You have a little bit of damage. You can initiate if you want to. You also have a great teamfight ability to turn teamfights to counter initiate. You have a good laning stage. You're really tanky. You do a little bit of everything, which is great for this hero. You also have a healing spell, which is awesome. So offlane is just the perfect role for her. It's the most popular role as well. So we're going to be focusing on that. Now, how do we think about Dawnbreaker in general? Well, like I already said, she has a little bit of everything. She does great in kind of all aspects of the game with her stun, her slow, her farming abilities, her healing, her teamfight ultimate, but she also does great in the lane. She's a really strong laner. Sometimes she can just dominate lanes. Some lanes she'll just get away with farming, but sometimes she can just even dive towers and just crush people in lanes because she is a very tanky strength hero that has a stun, a slow, and damage over time. The other thing is you want to be playing her later in the game, in the mid game and late game, almost like a Spectre, because you don't want to pick her with someone like a Spectre, with another carry that likes to farm away from the team and TP in or show up to the fight late, because she doesn't really love to initiate. Even though she is an offlaner, she would rather have other people on the team that want to initiate first so she can counter initiate with her ultimate. Now, if you need to initiate, if you need to buy Blink and kind of start the fight because no one else on your team does, you can totally do that, but that's not what she loves to do. Because she has a teamfight ultimate that's global, where you can kind of TP in or counter initiate from anywhere on the map, primarily your ideal situation is when your 4 teammates are going in, they're starting a fight, and then you counter initiate, or then you use your ultimate on top of them to secure the fight, to help them to stun, to heal, and all those things that her ultimate does. So that's how to think about Dawnbreaker in general. Now, what are her weaknesses? Well, really, she doesn't have too many weaknesses. That's kind of why she plays in every single role, and she's so good right now. But the one main weakness you can kind of say that she has is that a lot of her abilities are channeled. So if you do stun her and interrupt her abilities when she is channeling those abilities, then you kind of negate all of her usefulness, because she's, casting an ability, you stun her really quick, and then she doesn't get it off, and then she doesn't get that damage, that stun, etc., or she doesn't, she's not able to complete her ultimate, which can be a problem too. So that's kind of the main weakness. Now, eventually you do kind of make sure that weakness isn't that weak, because you get the shard, you have BKB in one of your abilities, you have like 3 BKBs basically. It's kind of OP, but that still is a weakness of Dawnbreaker. The other thing is, if you ultimate in to a fight and it goes badly, you kind of put yourself in a bad position, because you'll just suddenly drop out of the sky, you'll be in the team fight now, and it didn't work out. The guy you were trying to save or counter initiate on top of already died, and now you're in a bad position. You're probably going to die. So that's Dawnbreaker. That's how to think about her in general. Now let's jump in and take a look at her abilities. So now that we understand Dawnbreaker in general, we can take a look at her abilities and see how she's able to be that great offlaner with a counter initiation ultimate spell, and just great utility all around with her spell. So first we're going to take a look at Starbreaker. This is a pretty straightforward spell. You kind of cast it in a direction. You see there's a little bit of a target there with a circle, and that's because what happens is when you cast it, you swing your hammer twice, and then you land in that circle and stun. So we can see if we put free spells on and we cast it on this axe here, if the axe is in that circle where I cast it, he will get stunned. Now keep in mind, this is an ability that you can't really control, so you're going to be casting it in a direction. So if the axe runs underneath you, he will get hit by the first few swings, but then he can actually dodge. So it's one of those kind of small spells where it's not a lot of skill. It doesn't take a ton of skill, but you do have to aim it. It is a little bit of a skill shot to make sure that you're actually going to hit the enemy with the stun and get that damage. Now keep in mind, every swing also slows a little bit. So if I cast this on the axe, you can see every time he gets hit, he's slowed a little bit. So that does help you kind of keep the enemy within the grasp of your stun. Now, I usually don't talk about shards or items this early on, but I am going to talk about the shard right now, and that's largely because this shard is so good. You're buying it every single game. You're pretty much getting it at 15 minutes every time, and it buffs up this Dawnbreaker ability. So the first main thing that it does, which is really good, is it gives you a free BKB during casting. So you can see there I turn into like this little yellow, BKB hero while I'm casting it, and so you... Not that you can't get stunned, but it's a lot harder to stun you out of this ability. So during the laning stage, the first 15 minutes, if somebody just casts the stun on you while you're spinning around, then you won't get to complete your ability. So you won't stun them, you won't do that extra damage. So that can be very annoying, like I talked about. She is a very channeled ability kind of hero. But with the shard, now you have BKB, so really the only thing that can stop it is BKB piercing abilities, and there's not too many of those, especially ones that can, want to just walk up to you while you're casting that and then still stun you. It's kind of one of those things where just make sure you can get this off, which is really good. The other thing that happens is when I cast this, you can see that, well, she's just sort of standing in place, and that's because it doesn't make it so you don't travel anymore. It actually makes it so it's controllable. So I can cast it in this direction, and I can still move. So I can kind of go backwards if I want. I can go to the side. It's really good for making sure that the enemy can't dodge your Dawnbreaker anymore. So it's really good in both of those ways. It's probably one of the best shards in the game at this point right now, honestly. So that's Dawnbreaker, really, really good ability, great ability for damage, stun, control, all those things. Next, we're going to look at Celestial Hammer. This is a pretty interesting ability. So you throw your hammer out in a direction, and the hammer sticks in the ground for a short time, and then after a while, the hammer comes back to you, and it creates this line of fire that does damage and slows people. So if I throw it out again, I'll have it come, and then I'll have Axe walk through it, and then he takes some damage, and he's slowed. So it's really good in that regard for a little bit of utility, slowing, damaging, farming creeps, being very annoying in team fights, those kinds of things. But it also is a mobility spell. So if I throw it out here, and then before it comes back, if I click the ability again, I go to the middle, and the hammer comes with me. So basically, you always travel to the middle point between you and the hammer. So it's not like the best mobility spell like a puck orb. You can't go all the way to the hammer. It's always going to be in the middle, wherever that is. But if you throw it out, you can travel a short distance to go over cliffs. Like here, I'll just cast it over here, and then I'll throw it really quick, or I'll bring it back really quick, and now I'm over top of the cliff. And so it is one of these things where you can escape, you can get away from enemies, or you can chase them if you need to. So if the axe is kind of far away, you just throw it out, and then you really go quickly, and then you press your Q. That is a way that you can initiate without Blink Dagger. It can be very effective against slow heroes, low mobility heroes, and all of those kinds of things without Blink Dagger. So that's Celestial Hammer. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. The other thing to note is that when you throw this out, you can click. So it's not one of those abilities where it like disarms you when you have your hammer out there. I know some abilities like with Timbersaw, when you use your ultimate, you can't click, but this is not one of those abilities with Dawnbreaker. So that's Celestial Hammer. Now let's move on to the passive Luminosity. This is just kind of a spell that a lot of people don't really think about. It's kind of forgotten in all of her kit because her kit is so good. All of the other abilities that she has are so useful in so many ways, but this ability allows her to just have that extra utility in fights, buff up her team, and then do damage if she's going to go damage items. So what this does is it gives you this buff here. So you can see if you've been noticing this buff happening every time I click the enemy axe here, I get one of these buffs, and then on the fourth one I will do extra damage, so it'll hit a crit, and I will get healed, and every ally in this AoE here will also get healed for a little bit as well, for 60% of the damage that I give. So this works kind of like that Slardar Bash, where it buffs up to 3, you get 3 buffs, and then boom, there we go with the extra damage and the heal. So this is really good because the more attacks you get, the faster you attack, the more you're healing up your allies, you're really good in team fights because of that, and it also works with Dawnbreaker because the Dawnbreaker attacks count as attacks. You can see in a full Dawnbreaker, I get 3 buffs, and then my next attack, boom, there we go, that's the heal and the extra damage. So it's pretty good in general. It's a little bit for farming and sustaining in the jungle and in lane, but it's more just in team fights and dishing extra damage. It's just a really good kind of average passive all around. Good ability in that way. So that's Luminosity. Lastly, we're going to take a look at Solar Guardian. This is the ability that allows her to play like a Spectre, one of these heroes that wants to play away from her team because it's a global ultimate. So usually how you use it is, here's my ally axe, and there's an enemy axe, and the axe comes over and calls my ally. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see that happen, and then I'm going to press my ultimate on my ally, and after a short delay, after a short channel time, I drop in and I stun the axe. You can notice that during that full duration, my axe was getting healed and the enemy axe was taking damage, which is really important as well. And then you drop in after that few second delay. It's not really controllable. You can cancel it, but you're going to drop in after that few second delay, so keep that in mind. Now, this is one of these abilities that you don't really love to use to initiate, and that's because when I cast it, here I'll just cast on the axe again, the axe can just run away. So, like, if they, if your allies jump in and they don't have some kind of long duration stun or some way that they can keep the enemies locked in place, then they're probably just going to run away. But you can use it to counter initiate, because if they jump in, if they use their blinks and their mobility spells and everything to jump in on your ally, that's when you want to use it, because you're healing them, you're doing damage to the enemy, and if they don't run away, then they're going to get stunned once you land. So it's really good in that sense. That's why you want to play away from your team, and you don't love to initiate if you don't have to later on in the game. Now, keep in mind, this isn't an ability that you can use on creeps, so you can't just like escape by using it on creeps, so keep that in mind. And then you can cast it on yourself as well. So if I just click on myself here, I will cast it, and then I'll jump in the air and then land back down kind of right where I'm at. So keep that in mind. You can use it on yourself. It's just not ideal to use it on yourself, because you're not always going to be the one that gets initiated on. You're obviously not traveling across the map. It doesn't use that global aspect to it, but it is something that you can do if you need to and you're in a sticky situation. So that's Solar Guardian. That's all of the spells for Dawnbreaker. She's a really good all-around hero. There's not really any other items or anything that I need to talk about, because you can kind of see how these abilities are really good in itself. Also, last thing, the Ag Scepter, not great. It's just kind of okay. It just buffs up Solar Guardian, makes it a little bit easier to control and things like that, but it's not the best. People don't usually buy it on the hero. So that's Dawnbreaker. Those are her abilities, and now let's jump into a game and see how she's played. Now we're jumping into a game here of Limitless playing offlane Dawnbreaker, and level 1 you're probably going to be taking Celestial Hammer, just because it allows you to have a little bit of mobility in the lane, just in case you get into a sticky situation, but it's also really good for securing CS, because you don't really want to get up to secure the range creep with your Starbreaker there. So he's able to use Celestial Hammer to actually get that damage out for the range creep. So it's a good ranged ability to secure CS, especially range creeps early on in the lane. Now I also want you to notice how he's just kind of going ham on the enemy carry there, because one, he casted his Celestial Hammer and then he kind of pulled himself towards it, which is really good, because now he's up in the face of the enemy. There's also the burn damage and the fire on the ground and the slow, so they don't really want to fight into it. And he's also very tanky. This hero has a ton of base damage. Obviously, he has some stats here, but great base damage, really, really good HP. So this hero is super tanky and hard to deal with in the lane. So just keep that in mind. You can get aggressive, but you don't want to waste a lot of your HP or a lot of your mana early on in the lane, largely because once you get level 2 especially, you're going to be extremely strong. So I'm just going to fast forward here a little bit, because in this part, he just kind of plays the lane really well as an offlaner. He kind of gets these creep waves, allows his ally to pull, but then keeps the enemy creeps outside of tower range, so he can kind of delete this entire wave and get the lane equilibrium back towards himself. So this is just a great example of how to play offlane in general, just offlane mechanics, keeping the lane equilibrium in front of your tower. He deletes an entire wave here. You see the TA wasn't even contesting this wave, which is really, really good for him. And then once this wave is gone, you'll see that the next wave kind of comes right up to his tower, and now he's level 2, actually almost level 3 here, which is perfect. I think the Skywrath will also be getting level 2, yeah, off of this. So watch what they do now that they both have level 2. They just instantly get super aggressive here on the TA, because the TA is level 2, TA is very weak early on, and then with the combination of the slow, the stun, and all of his abilities, they get an easy first blood on the carry. Now obviously, Dazzle's a really, really good support right now, so he does get pretty low, but then watch this. The Dazzle's pretty weak, pretty low. His Q is no longer available, and so yes, he uses his stick, but he's able to go in here with the stun, with the extra damage, and the Starbreaker, and they get 2 kills. Now, obviously, he has pretty low health, so he does have to be careful, low resources, but you can just see how really early on, with only level 2, this hero is extremely strong, especially if you get the lane equilibrium back in your favor, near your tower, and you have a good support that can help you stun or do extra damage like he has with Skywrath. You're going to be able to dominate lanes with this hero against weak carries. So I think that's just a perfect example of what to do in the laning stage. Now, obviously, when you have low resources, be careful, just like in any lane. But this hero can be super powerful in lane against the right matchups against weak carries. So that's honestly just how you play this hero in the lane, and you can obviously sit back and farm just like any other offlaner, and as you get more levels, you're going to become even stronger. This hero has a power spike of level 2, and then just kind of keeps getting stronger from there. There's no real time that you have to be careful after that. There's no real downtime after your level 2 spike. It's just that you keep getting stronger and scaling up from there. It's just really, really good in that regard. So there are certain matchups, obviously some strong carries you do need to be scared of, maybe like an Ursa or a CK, but other than that, you're going to be able to dominate lanes. So that's Dawnbreaker in the laning stage. Now let's jump forward to the mid game. Oh, so I wanted to show you this little part because obviously it's only, almost 6 minutes into the game right now, but he's just dominating this lane so hard that he is almost level 6 at 6 minutes, which is really, really good. The Skywrath was able to kind of roam around. He was getting almost solo XP this whole time, which is really important. But the main reason that I wanted to show you this is because as soon as you hit level 6, even if you're dominating, or you're just having a normal lane where you're not getting level 6 at 6 minutes like you just did now, as soon as you hit level 6, you want to be looking to use your ultimate to help out your team. Whether that means you're counter-initiating, or, they're diving towers, or you're getting aggressive on the enemy. Like, Bat is a pretty aggressive hero, so you can see he's just looking mid, and then he just instantly ults in with the Bat Lasso, and they get a kill on the mid. This is exactly what you want to be doing. You don't just want to be sitting around with this hero's ultimate. Obviously, it is a low cooldown, especially at level 1, but as soon as you get it up, you want to be using it to help the side lanes as an offlaner. That's exactly what you want to be doing, especially if you have a hero like Bat, who also likes to get aggressive early on and has these early strengths like that. So that's just what I wanted to show you, that transition out of the laning stage. Once you get 6, try to use it off cooldown to help your team, to fight with your team. That's exactly what you want to be doing with this hero. So now I fast forwarded to about 14.5 minutes, and I wanted to show you this little part. It's not actually that, exciting. There's nothing crazy happening, but I want to show you kind of how this hero plays like a Spectre. So a lot of times, around this time in the game, the carry will be playing in this part of the map, because this is where some of the easier farm is. Carry usually likes to farm triangle, but this game it's a little bit different because they do have a Pudge and they have a Bat Rider. Those are the cores. So this Dawnbreaker is kind of playing up here because the other heroes like to get involved, and because the other heroes like to get involved, she wants to play as far away from the team as possible, playing up here, kind of alone, and then waiting for a team fight to happen. So you can see you're just using your 2 relatively low cooldown abilities in Celestial Hammer and Starbreaker to farm as much as possible. You can see he's either stacking the camps or trying to farm 2 camps at once there. Always kind of keeping an eye out on his allies to see what they're doing, if they're getting initiated on, if a team fight is happening. Otherwise, he's just kind of passively farming on the other side of the map, which is really good, especially until that 15-minute timing when you get enough gold for your shard here with that upgrade to the Starbreaker, because that's a really, really great timing. That's probably one of your big power spikes early on when you get that 15-minute shard, because now you have that free BKB, which is really, really good. You can see how he's constantly looking down there to see if a fight breaks out, and then as soon as a fight does break out, which it's about to here, I believe, in a second, he immediately ults in on top of his Pudge to just save his Pudge, make the enemy run away. You see they waste some of the spells, and then they get really aggressive. And this is just a perfect example. Obviously, it turns into a kill with the Dazzle. I think there are some other kills. Yeah, she does get aggressive and ends up going onto the Earthshaker here, and then they get a kill on the Enigma, who kind of not wasted Black Hole. It was a decent Black Hole, but still. So team fight breaks out largely because he was able to save his Pudge. He's able to go in, kill the Dazzle really quick. They got a few good kills, and that's mainly how you want to be playing this hero in the mid-game portion, in that mid-game time. Farming away from your team, and then getting aggressive with your ultimate when a fight breaks out. So I fast forwarded to about 20 minutes here, and I actually wanted to show you this because this is a little bit of a mistake. So he has his ultimate off cooldown, which means that you're supposed to be farming and stuff like this, but you'd probably rather be playing with your team when your ult is off cooldown, but he still has it almost up, and he goes up here to farm away from his team, and he ends up dying. And I just wanted to show you this because even though obviously you want to be playing away from your team, even though his cooldown was almost, or his ultimate was almost off cooldown, so he wants to play away from his team, you do need to be careful as this hero, especially against a team like with an Enigma that has a BKB piercing stun, because if the enemy knows anything about Dawnbreaker, they're going to know that you're going to want to play away from your team. So they kind of can see when you're in a lane that you're probably going to be by yourself because they know you want to ult into the fight. So just keep in mind that it is one of those things where you have to be very wary of where you're at on the map, where the enemy is, because the play that they should make, if they're smart, is actually to go after you because you're solo than to go after your team because you can ult in. So just keep that in mind. That is something that you need to be wary of. That's something where you can definitely feed away a lead and not have very high impact if you end up not playing correctly and feeding because you're kind of off by yourself and your team can't help you and you end up dying. So just keep that in mind. That's something I wanted to show you. It's a small mistake here that he makes, but it's something that can happen to any kind of Spectre or Dawnbreaker like hero that can play away from their team, but just keep that in mind. That is something to be cognizant of during your play. And now the last thing I wanted to show you here is a little bit later in the game. 25 minutes plus could be considered, you know, later in the game once people have a lot of items. He is playing away from his team, sure, but he just kind of went down here to clear out the wave, to clear some of the farm. They just got Aegis, now the Pudge used it up. So he's playing away from his team a little bit, but he's actually kind of close to them. So I just wanted to show you this because even though I say play away from your team, it doesn't mean play on the other side of the map, especially late game. Like, you don't always want to be playing completely on the opposite side of the map. Sometimes it just means playing a little bit further back so you can counter initiate because you don't want to be the one that gets gone on. That's the thing about Dawnbreaker is if you're initiating, that's fine. He has a blink now, that's great. You can initiate, get solo pickoffs, stuff like that. If you're counter initiating, that's great. What you really don't want to happen, the thing that you cannot let happen, is that you get initiated on yourself by the enemy team. So you don't want to be frontlining. You don't want to be standing in front. Even if you're playing with your team because you have Aegis, you're looking to push, that kind of stuff, you don't want to be sitting in the very front of the team, in the front of the map, letting them initiate on you so you don't get your spells off. Like, if he was the one that got black hole there, or he was the one that got gone on because he was, like, standing next to his Pudge, that probably could have been a completely different team fight. Maybe he doesn't get his ultimate off. Maybe a bunch of people die. You know, they kill the Pudge's Aegis and they kill him again. It just could be a completely different thing if he doesn't get his ultimate off and that insane, like, ravaged Starbreaker that he had there. So just keep that in mind. That's probably the worst thing that you can do is be in the front line with your team rather than counter initiating. I just wanted to give you that example because playing away from your team doesn't necessarily mean always on the opposite side of the map, especially late game. Sometimes it just means sitting in the back line to wait for the right opportunity to use all of your spells. So that's Dawnbreaker. I hope that was informative and helpful for you guys. As always, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Join the Discord if you haven't already. If you want to support me and see more videos like this into the future, consider donating at my Patreon, becoming a subscriber there. Or if you just want coaching in general, I've coached a lot of people and helped them gain a lot of MMR, which is really cool and really awesome. I really enjoy doing it. You can go to my Patreon as well and sign up for coaching there. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.